Hey friends, Frosty Worm here today to touch on an icy subject, that being stasis. Sorry for the puns. At any rate, stasis, we kind of talked, we touched on stasis a little bit, I guess kind of relatively recently. But stasis, I wanted to make a whole video kind of dedicated to stasis and, why I think it's kind of in a bad spot and what we can do to fix it, I guess. Because honestly, I don't use a lot of stasis in PvE activities or in PvP for that matter, with the exception of maybe one build. And we'll talk about that build in a little bit. But yeah, let's talk about it. First of all, let's kind of talk about the stasis kit here, right? Because the stasis kit is a really, really interesting one. But honestly, it feels like it is almost directly like made. I don't want to, you know what? No, I will say it. It's almost made irrelevant by strand, right? Stasis is about freezing and slowing opponents, right? Of course, on stasis, you have 3 different grenades. You have the glacier grenade, which gives you, basically when you throw it, you get a wall of crystals, or if you're using a touch of, touch of winter on Hunter, you get like a round circle thing of stasis crystals. There is the dusk field grenade, which makes a like little area of effect that slows and will eventually freeze targets that are in it. And of course, there's a cold snap, which will send off seekers that can freeze targets. Blah, blah, blah. Each class has their own different melee abilities. Penumbral Blast for Warlock, you send out the little thing. It goes, I think 16 meters is what its current range is. And if it hits, it'll instantly freeze the target. On Titan, you have Shiver Strike, which is a really odd melee because when you activate it, it uses half your melee to do like the charge, and then it does the other half when you actually smack something, right? Or when you actually do the little, I don't know, it's a weird melee. But yeah, then Hunter of course has 2 withering blades. They just throw them and they slow target, stuff like that. And then of course each class has their supers. Hunter has the Revenant super. I can't remember, what is it? Silence and Squall. There you go. Silence and Squall. You throw one that freezes, the other that makes a slowing / shattering tornado. Titans get that juicy glacial quake where they can make a ton of crystals and shatter them just by sprinting into them. And Warlocks get that oh so sweet sounding Shadebinder. The activation on that is perfect. Where they can freeze targets and then shatter them. However, stasis is not really in a great spot in terms of PvE or PvP for that matter, with of course the exception of one build. And I just want to touch on that real quick. Yes, stasis is very viable on Warlock, but I don't think it's viable on Warlock because it's a good subclass. It's viable because of an exotic, and we'll touch on that a little bit later. But for the most part, I don't see Guardians running around with stasis subclasses, sorry. I don't see him running around with stasis subclasses equipped. I don't see it in the Crucible. I don't see it in Strikes. I don't see it in Nightfalls. I don't really see it anywhere. And this is nothing new. Like, I didn't see it last season. I didn't see it the previous season. Like the number of times I've seen stasis out in the wild, like somebody actually using it, is very, very limited. And I want to talk about why I think that stasis is weak today, starting off with the number one point, which is that stasis is a subclass that slows down the game, right? And we as Destiny players, we know that we don't like slow. Okay, we don't like to be slowed down at all. We don't like when our primary weapons deal less damage to targets because they're frozen. We don't like slowing. We don't like the idea of slowing and freezing and stuff like that. Okay, and obviously we don't like when it's used against us. If you were there for Beyond Light when it first launched, you know what I'm talking about. But it slows down the game, and I think that's kind of one of the biggest issues with stasis, is that it does slow down the game. And even though you're only slowing, I'm only slowing enemies, that still is not as interactive as, something like Arc, Solar, Void, where you are, actively hammering enemies with all kinds of different damages. And that's one thing that stasis has that's so different from other subclasses, is stasis is not really a massive damage dealer as opposed to a enemy manipulator, right? Like, I think the most damaging thing you have is maybe glacial the glacier grenade and stasis crystals, because the crystals can be shattered to deal pretty good damage, but at the same time, everything else on these kits, it feels like, is really just not big in terms of damage, you know? Even the one and done super, the one that we have, which is Silence and Squall, doesn't really deal a lot of damage. It's better suited for ad clear, in my opinion. But they, you know, Stasis is about enemy manipulation, right? And in a world where Destiny is fast paced, DPS, kill as much as you can, Stasis just doesn't really fit in, right? And you know, and I've thought about this kind of, you know, long and hard, like, you know, why is Stasis not used as much as it is? Because it can be good, but I think that also the amount of effort that you have to put into the Stasis kit and the amount of build crafting you have to do to make it good is kind of excessive. You know, I could use, you know, my Stasis build with Hoarfrost and all the Stasis shard stuff like that, blah blah blah, and you know, it'd be great. But also I could also just put on like Arc, you know, and Heart of Inmost Light, or not Eternal Warrior, sorry, Insurmountable Skullfort, or I can put on, you know, Strand, and we'll talk about Strand more in just a second. But you know, there's all these other classes that deal just more damage, you know, just flat out more damage and don't require as much build crafting. I think that's, you know, one of the reasons why we don't see Stasis as much. But also, I'm going to move on to Strand now, because Strand, in my opinion, makes Stasis, oh, I don't want to say irrelevant, but it makes it almost like irrelevant. Okay, Strand does the same thing that Stasis does, except I would argue that it does it better. Stasis, you can freeze targets. You can also slow targets. Okay, slowed targets, you know, they walk slower, blah, blah, blah. They can't use certain abilities like teleport, stuff like that. Frozen targets, of course, are frozen dead in place. But the reason why I think Strand is better is because Strand can also stop targets in their tracks, right? Suspend. Puts them up in the air. Not only does it put them up in the air, but your weapons deal normal damage. Primary ammo weapons deal less damage against frozen targets. And the big thing here is the targets don't shatter after X amount of damage. You know, when you freeze a target, it will shatter, you know, and then it does a little bit of damage, and then, you know, it's back, you know, charging you down like an unstoppable champion, for example, right? Versus Strand, you just throw them up in the air, they're stuck up there. You can literally deal as much damage, and I think, what is it, like 10 seconds or something like that, with the fragment on that extends the duration of the effects. Like, it's like 10 seconds, 10 or 12 seconds. Like, that's a long time for something like a champion or like a wyvern. You know, this week in the Grandmaster Nightfall, wyverns are a real pain in the booty in that final room. But with Strand and Suspend, it just makes it totally irrelevant. And it helps because, you know, on wyverns, for example, it exposes their crit spot, you know, when they're stuck up in the air. And so Stasis doesn't like, it feels like it's just outclassed by Strand in every way. But I almost think the cherry on top of the reason why people don't use Strand is the mega slow cooldowns for the abilities. And this, like, I understand why Bungie made this the way they did back whenever, you know, Stasis first launched, but that was 2 years ago, Bungie. Oh my gosh, like, the cooldowns on things like the melees, the grenades, the supers is immense. Okay, and it even still says so in the text, like darkness based subclasses have slower cooldowns, but Strand, I don't know if y'all view Strand, but Strand cooldowns do not feel slow at all. I think Strand, in my opinion, maybe it's just the build I have going on, but Strand feels like it has some of the fastest ability cooldowns of any other class. It's incredible how fast Strand cools down. So Stasis, you know, not only does it require a lot of build crafting to make it good, not only is it outclassed by Strand, but also its abilities are on massive cooldowns. And that kind of, in my opinion, nails the final nail in the coffin for Stasis. That's why you don't see it. Now, does that make it bad? No. Again, like, you know, you can use like Mask of Bacchus Hunter. I know that who was it? Either Cool Guy or True Vanguard. They have a build they're doing right now with Mask of Bacchus, and it's really good. It can work. But at the same time, everything else can do something very, very similar, if not maybe even better than Stasis can. You know, of course, the one exception would be the Osmiomancy Warlock, which the Osmiomancy Warlock is very, very good. But again, like, especially now that we have Abiant Leap Titans, Like, I don't see a point in having an Osmiomancy Warlock on your team if you've got Abiant Leap Titans. You know? Like, yeah, the freezing turret is nice, but like Abiant Leap Titans, like I get that barricade back way faster. I get grenade energy back way faster. Like I'm constantly suspending targets up in the air, the wyverns, champions, wyverns, like anything that comes my way, I am on top of it, and I always have something ready to go. So I think that even the most powerful stasis build right now is being outclassed. So of course, what do we do to actually fix stasis and bring it back into, I guess, a good light, right? Thing number one, very, very important. The cooldowns have got to be changed. Okay, the slow cooldowns, in my opinion, is just, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous that a glacier grenade is like on a 2.5 minute cooldown or something like that. And that's of course not a tier 10 discipline, but 2.5 minutes, that is so long. Like I think maybe I think it's a flux grenade might be like the next closest one. And I don't even think the flux grenade is 2.5 minutes. Like I think the flux grenade is 2 minutes. I could be wrong. I don't do research into these things before I start talking about it. But the cooldowns, they have to be reduced. That's the very first thing. I think if you do that alone, like people would start using stasis more. But the next thing, we need something to spice up the freezing and the slowing. Because again, Strand literally does this, but better. And I know like I'm sure somebody's gonna say, well, when a target is frozen by stasis, your special weapons deal more damage to them. And yes, like that is good. I'm not gonna say that's that's bad by any means, but I don't think that it pushes it to the where it needs to be, because primaries and heavies, which are what most people are using for like ad clear and stuff like that, these weapons deal less damage to frozen targets. So I think that we need to see some type of change to how weapons are interacting with frozen targets. I think that just remove the damage penalties altogether. Removing damage penalties would be a fantastic start. But then not only do you remove damage penalties, but maybe even give some bonuses to all weapon types. Like, hey, all weapons deal bonus damage against frozen targets. Because again, Strand and the ability to suspend targets still would be better than freezing, because freezing, they're frozen till they deal, till you deal, say, like 10,000 damage to them, right? They're frozen till you deal 10,000 damage, and then they shatter, and then they're running you down again, right? But with Strand, they're up there for 10 seconds. 10 seconds, you can put out a lot of damage in 10 seconds. Like you can put out a lot of damage in 3 seconds. Like you can kill a Grandmaster champion that's suspended literally in 3 seconds. Okay, so with stasis, we need to see something to incentivize, like, hey, like, yeah, like, freeze a target. They're not going to stay still for long, but you're going to deal more damage to them. Maybe, maybe the shatter, the shatter damage bonus is much higher, because the shatter is nice, but I feel like the shatter is kind of situational, in terms of how many ads are around them and stuff like that. And yeah, like it's great to, if you freeze 5 or 6 targets and you destroy one, they're all going to shatter. Like that's good. I'm not saying that's not good or that's not, anything like that, but it just, there's not really a reason to use it when you have suspend. So I think that increasing damage that weapons deal against frozen targets is another great start. Also, one of the things is in terms of the slowness of the kit, I think that's one of the first things we talked about with stasis, is it feels slow. I think that we should have more, hold on, let me think of how do I want to put this without making things too like busted or OP or anything like that. But I think that we should have more, like maybe more like class stats added on top, or more benefits added on top of stasis. Like, with Strand, for example, we have suspend, we have sever, we have unraveled, then we have let's see here, what is the other one? Woven mail. So that's four things, to go with it. For Void, we have Invis, Volatile, we have a bunch for Void. There's like 6 or something like that. For Solar, we have Radiant, we have Scorched, we have Restoration, we have Cure. Like we have all these keywords, but Stasis has 2. has slow, and it has frozen, and that's it. And we need to see something else added to this mix, you know, and what it could be, I don't know. Like, I'm gonna leave this to Bungie and their creativity. You know, we have slow, we have free or frozen, which are great, but I think we need something else to go on top of it. Also, I think that the kits themselves need to see more potency. Again, you know, with our light-based subclasses, it's all about dealing damage, you know, to targets, but with Stasis, it's about manipulating, it's about freezing, it's about, you know, slowing targets. Like, I think that the slow and the freeze and stuff like that needs to be more potent, you know, because why would I throw a dust field grenade, for example, into a group of thrall just to slow them down when I could throw a storm grenade or, you know, a vortex grenade and just instantly destroy them all, you know? And I know somebody's gonna say, well, there's different utility for these, and yes, but also at the same time, like, it's like, I don't really know, you know. I don't think that the utility is all that viable in its current state. Now, maybe, you know, you throw a dusk field and the area is much bigger, and, you know, enemies, when they're slowed, they are maybe blinded or something too, you know, or maybe not like blinded, but, you know, they can't attack or something like that. Like, I think maybe that would help. You know, in terms of the shatter damage for stasis crystals and frozen target, maybe increase that, you know, increasing that to deal more damage. That way, okay, you know, I'm gonna use either stasis or strand, right? I can either suspend this champion or I can freeze this champion, and they have trade-offs, you know. Like, suspend, like, yeah, they're up there for longer, you know, and you can smack them with all your weapons. But with stasis, like, you freeze them, and yeah, they'll break out of their freeze, but maybe that breakout damage is like big damage, like really big damage, like 1/3 of a champion's health bar in Grandmaster type damage. I don't know. This is just kind of like, I guess, ideas and stuff like that for stasis, and some of the ideas that we have are, in my opinion, very viable, but a lot of them, I don't really know how they'd play out. You know, I think it would have to be careful, because we don't want to go back to a state where stasis was back in Beyond Light, because that was absolutely insane. Whew. Yeah, that was rough. But yeah, maybe add some more fragments and aspects, and hell, some more supers would be nice too. I don't know. Anyways, yeah. That's stasis. That's kind of where it's at. That's my thoughts and stuff, and how maybe Bungie can fix it. And we know that some of the stasis supers are getting some buffs and stuff like that. And Bungie has talked about they're working on stasis, so maybe we get a surprise next season, and Bungie says, hey, you know what? We've changed stasis. We've reverted the cooldowns, so now they're on normal cooldowns or something like that. I would almost even say, actually, one more thing. I would almost even say the cooldowns for stasis grenades should be faster than all of the light subclass grenades, because, again, they're not necessarily damage dealers. They're more about utility. You know, you throw a glacier grenade to block enemy damage that's coming at you, or to encase a, you know, in the glassway, for example, when you're in one of those rooms on the side, you throw it in the doorway, then literally no champions or anything can come through at you, right? I don't know. Like, I think that the cooldowns should be not only reverted so that they're not as long, but they should be faster than everything else. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about that. I really want to see changes to stasis. I like stasis. I have a stasis Titan build I really enjoy using, but it's just nowhere near as potent as Strand Titan. And who knows, maybe I'm just crazy. Maybe, you know, Strand is so new right now. Maybe, you know, Strand is has artifact mods associated with it. Maybe once we get rid of all that, it won't be as good. I doubt it, because even without the artifact mods, like, it's pretty potent. It is really strong. But yeah, let me know your guys' thoughts, though. Do you agree with what I said? Do you disagree? Like, you know, what do you think is the strongest stasis class currently? And how would you change stasis to make it a little bit more viable, I guess, in game, so that, you know, it's not just like, hey, I'm going to use something else besides stasis. Yeah, if you like the video, please drop a like. It helps the channel out a lot. Of course, subscribe for more daily Destiny content, because we do this stuff daily. And hey, do me a favor, watch the video you see on the end screen, because for whatever reason, YouTube thinks you might like it. That's it for me, guys, and I'll catch y'all in the next one. Bye for now.